Howdy, y'all. Welcome to North Point Live. My name is Matthew. This is Cole, and that is Aaron. We're getting ready to lead y'all in a little bit of musical worship. But before that, little disclaimer for you. We're about to play a new song called Make Us One. God kind of dropped it like a bomb on me while the staff and I were praying, getting ready for staff meeting. The song speaks to unity, and I think that is so important right now. We've got so much division and strife and pain going on in the United States and around the world right now, and a lot of division. So I thought that this song would speak to that in a very powerful way. So I pray that the Spirit would speak through this song to all of y'all. But take it away, Aaron.
Father, one with the Spirit, one with the Son of God, one with our sister, one with our brother, one family by the blood. Make us one, make us one. God, make us one. 1, 2, 3, 4. One heart with heaven, one mind connected, one body unified. Bind us together, now and forever. Jesus be glorified and make us one. God, make us one. Your will be done. God, make us one. God, make us one. Make us one. Come heal our land with your great river. Restore the family and make us one. Yeah, make us one. Let your will be done. God, make us one. Yeah, make us one. Yeah, make us one.
Hello, we're glad that you're joining us online today. My name's Tim Bycroft. You may catch me later today also, but if you stick around online. But we're glad you're here today. We're going into a time right now of communion. And this may be a time where you stop and pause because we do this weekly. I mean, if you're joining us new, we're glad you're here. But this is something we do on a weekly basis as North Point Church to simply remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for us on the cross. So maybe this is the time where you press pause and you get your communion ready, whatever it is, whatever you have prepared or not prepared to celebrate the memorial feast that we have weekly. And Jesus established that for us, just to remember the sacrifice of unconditional love that he demonstrated for you and I on the cross, where his body was broken and his blood was shed. I'm going to key in on that for just a moment. It's been a crazy day around the Bycroft house. I mean, crazy. And one of the crazy things that took place today was my daughter Jillian, who loves to go barefoot all over the place. She came running up on our deck and slid her feet across our deck, and sure enough, got this huge splinter in her foot. And it looked like a crime scene. I'm telling you, there was blood everywhere. And it didn't start right away. She got into the house, was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, it just gush. And literally blood everywhere. And it was gross. It was just gross. But she was really good about it. We had to actually take her to the hospital to get the rest of the splinter taken out because it was deep in there. But Mindy did that, took her to the hospital. I stuck around to clean up the crime scene, if you will. And it got me thinking. Here's my little daughter Jillian, who some of you may or may not know, we adopted from Haiti. Little black girl. Beautiful girl. Wonderful girl. Smart girl. Looks older than she is. But anyway, as I'm cleaning up the blood, I'm like, this could have been any of my kids' blood. This could have been my blood. You can't tell the difference when it's on the ground. Bloodshed. It all looks the same. No matter if I'm white, black, it doesn't matter what language you speak, what color you are, our blood is all the same. And I took it a step further and thought about this, is that when we give our lives to Jesus Christ and we remember the sacrifice that he made for you and I, our blood is even thicker because our blood has all been washed through Jesus's. We're now blood brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. And so today, as you remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for you and I, remember that you're part of a brotherhood and sisterhood of a family in Jesus Christ through the bond of blood through Jesus Christ. It's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. So as you celebrate the memorial feast today, remember Jesus, remember his sacrifice, remember the family that you belong to. All of our blood's the same. It's the blood of Jesus Christ.
I wanna be close, close to your side, so heaven is real and death is a lie. I wanna hear voices of angels above, singing as one, hallelujah, holy, holy, God Almighty, great I am, who is worthy, none beside thee, God Almighty, great I am. I wanna be near to your heart, loving the world, hating the dark. I wanna see dry bones living again, singing as one, hallelujah, holy, holy, God Almighty, great I am, who is worthy, none besides thee, God Almighty, great I am, great I am, so great I am, great I am. The mountains shake before you, the demons run and flee at the mention of your name, King of Majesty. There is no power in hell any who can stand before the power of the presence of great I am, great I am, great I am. He's a great I am, great I am, great I am. Hallelujah, holy, holy, God Almighty, the great I am, who is worthy, none besides thee, God Almighty, oh, the great I am. It's the great I am, great I am, great I am. The mountains shake before you, the demons run and flee. At the mention of your name, King of majesty, there is no power in hell or any who can stand before the power and the presence of great I am, 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 great I am. Hallelujah, holy, holy, God Almighty, great I am, who is worthy, none besides thee, God Almighty, oh, the great I am, great I am, the great I am, great I am.
Good morning and welcome to North Point Church Online. We are so happy to have you here with us today. My name is Shannon Hine. I am the Director of Connections. Whether this is your first time here joining us or this is your millionth time joining us online, let me assure you that you belong here and we are happy to have you here with us this morning. I'm coming to you live from Bristol, Wisconsin. It's like my little slice of heaven that I love to just come down here and just reflect and relax and sip on my coffee in the morning. And so I'm here before church gets started, but also before church gets started, you guys, we have some announcements to bring to you this morning. First and foremost, we want to hear from you. Yes, you. We want to hear from you. So if you could take a moment this morning and just fill out a communication card, northpointchurch.org/connect. Let us know how you're doing. Or if there's anything you need. If you need prayer, we're a praying church. We love to pray for you and with you. So I encourage you to go to northpointchurch.org/connect. Fill out those prayer requests, shoot us some comments, just say hello because we miss you guys and we want to hear from you. Also, today is Starting Point. This is a great time for you to get to know us and us to get to know you. So if you would like to join us today at noon via Zoom, we will be on there today. Shoot a message here in the stream that you're watching, or you can also email me at shannon@northpointchurch.org, and I will go ahead and send you that link to join that Zoom call. Also, kids services. Kids services are still happening, you guys, so I hope your kids are checking those out. They're an awesome, awesome time for them. Go to northpointchurch.org/aim and you can catch all of our kids services there. Speaking of kids, our staff, our people that serve back in NPC Kids, they miss your kids. So kids, if you're watching this, make sure your parents put you on the kids Zoom call today at 10:30. This is going to be an amazing time for you guys to see your friends, play games, see your teachers, and just have some fun. We miss your faces. So make sure your kids jump on that Zoom call. Again, DM us, or you can also email Sarah at sarah@northpointchurch.org, and we will send you the link for that Zoom call. We have to send links for Zoom calls. It's for the safety of our kids and for the safety of you to be able to do that. So if you want your kids to be a part of it, or kids, if you want to be a part of it, make sure that your parents tap into that today. Also, for our kids coming up, we have a graduation party at North Point Church for all of our graduates. This has been a super tough time for our 2020 graduates. They didn't get to have ceremonies this year, and so what better way for us to come together and just celebrate them, celebrate their success and all of their accomplishments. So June 13th at 11 a.m. outside of North Point Church, we will be having a party for them. This is a drive-through thing. We encourage you guys, decorate your cars, just drive by and honk. $5 gift cards if you can. There's so many different ways that you guys can celebrate our seniors and 8th grade graduates this year. So go ahead and email Bree at BREE@northpointchurch.org, and she will send you all of the information on that. Also, I want to give a huge shout out and just a huge thank you for all of you that have continued to faithfully and graciously give during this time. I'm seriously completely blown away by North Point Church. You guys just amaze me. We are like, our Giving Point food pantry is blowing up. We're feeding more than 1,500 people a month, and that is because of you guys. Operation Outpour, we did a campaign with them, like in hopes that we would raise $10,000 to help them. And you guys like over succeeded that. So amazing. That is continuing to go on. You guys, I just love you and I thank you for your generosity during this time. If you would like to give to North Point Church, you can go to npcgive.org and sign up today for your offerings and tithes. northpointchurch.org/links. I encourage you guys to go there because I know during these announcements, we like give you guys all these different websites and different things to go to stay connected with us. But the easiest way to do that is just go to northpointchurch.org/links and you can stay up to date on everything that's going on. I love you and I miss you guys. But if I'm not mistaken, I think I might be late to church. So I need to hurry up, grab my coffee and run home. I love you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys again soon.
Well, hello, my name is Tim Bycroft, and I'm the lead pastor here at North Point Church in Winthrop Harbor, Illinois. And we are so glad that you're joining us today at North Point Church online. Today, if you've been watching over the last few weeks, we've been in a series just simply entitled Bad Advice. But I'm going to take a little break from that teaching today because over the last few weeks, well, we've had some really interesting seasons in the life of our country, and it's affected us all to some degree or another. So in light of what's going on, from some of the senseless acts, some of the senseless murders that have literally taken place with Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, or the killing of George Floyd in Minnesota or Minneapolis by the cops. There's been some terrible things that have taken place. So it's been very emotional for a lot of us. It's been very trying for many of us. A lot of us have been impacted by this to some degree or another, literally across our country. And so I want to talk about something that's a little near and dear to my heart, and I'll get to that here in a minute as to why. But I think it impacts all of us. If you're watching today, this impacts all of us. And what I want to do is I want to talk about racism and what our response is to racism. Jesus spoke about this. He talked about how we work or how we treat some of the marginalized people in our societies. whether it was the homeless or the hungry, those in prison. And he spoke about this in words that I think we all need to take to heart. Jesus said this in Matthew 5:25, starting in verse 40. He said this, "I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." When you did something to the least of these, my brothers, you were doing it to me. And so I don't know where you're at today. I don't know what you're doing, but can you just stop for just a second and lean into what I'm about to say? Because in light of that passage of Scripture, in light of what Jesus is saying, this is what I believe. In light of the recent events in our nation, and in light of what Jesus says, you must picture Jesus with his neck under the knee of that police officer. You must picture Jesus as a 17-year-old kid running and getting shot and killed. You must see the face of Jesus in the store owners and watching them as their stores or their shops burn to the ground. You must see the face of Jesus in the people who have been discriminated against time and time again. So here's my main point for the day. God's people, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ, God's people are to treat those who are marginalized in society like they would Jesus. So let me ask you a question. How does that make you feel? When I say something like that, how does that make you feel? Some of you can probably relate to that. Some of you get it. Some of you are mad that I'm even bringing this subject up today. You think you ought to, no, we don't want to talk about that. Some of you rationalize your hatred towards others. Some of you may think, wow, you hate cops, Tim, from some of the things you've already said. Some of you are rationalizing acts of violence that are even taking place today through the rioting. Some of you are fired up right now that I'm even bringing up this subject. Some of you may even just be indifferent. The things that I've said right now haven't affected you at all, which really, truly breaks my heart because I think it breaks the heart of God when we're indifferent. And I think there's probably a group of you right now that may be in tears. And so my question, when you see someone facing injustice, who do you see? Do you see the face of Jesus or not? Now, before we jump in any further, I want to give you some of my background because this may bring some understanding from where I come from, the position that I come from. Several years ago, I actually worked for a sheriff's department, Warren County Sheriff's Department in Monmouth, Illinois. I worked there for over 7 years. I worked alongside of the sheriff and other deputies and correctional officers. I worked alongside of police officers, state police. I worked alongside of all kinds of cops, okay? And this is what I know. Most of these guys, the vast majority of these men and women care about their communities deeply. They do an upstanding, phenomenal job. But yes, some of them aren't. And some of them take advantage of their position, and that is true. Some of you may not know this as well, that my wife and I, Mindy and I, we adopted 2 children from Haiti. They're black. And we've even been questioned, why would you do such a thing? Shouldn't they live with someone of their own kind? And I have to admit, all this subject grates my emotions. I mean, it tears me up on the inside because I would rather my friends, whether they're black, brown, white, whatever, even some of you pasty white people, all right? I would rather you just be my friends, just my friends. And my kids, just be my kids, because that's what they are, not black, not white, whatever the case may be. And so this is the position I come from today. And what hurts me is to know that this topic, when my kids see me preaching today, because they will see me preaching today, I will have to explain to them, to my kids, why we even need to have a sermon that talks about race and color, ethnicity, and equality. I share all this because I want you to know I love police officers. I love cops because of my experience. I love my family and my friends. And many of them don't share the same skin color as I do. They don't look like me. Some of them are grateful they don't look like me. Let's be honest. Excuse me. And so it's with those thoughts that I say this. With that knowledge, that I tell you that it breaks my heart. It's so heartbreaking for me what is happening in our country right now. And the ways that I see people fighting and speaking over one another, especially on social media, where nobody wins. So I say this up front. Because this is my disclaimer. That we as a church need to clearly condemn the sinful acts of people, the evil behavior of people. There's been things that are taking place in our country, in our society, in our area that are wicked, that are evil, that are terrible things. And I believe without hesitation. Well, hello, my name is Tim Bycroft, and I'm the lead pastor here at North Point Church in Winthrop Harbor, Illinois. And we are so glad that you're joining us today at North Point Church online. Today, if you've been watching over the last few weeks, we've been in a series just simply entitled Bad Advice. But I'm going to take a little break from that teaching today because over the last few weeks, well, we've had some really interesting seasons in the life of our country, and it's affected us all to some degree or another. So in light of what's going on, from some of the senseless acts, some of the senseless murders that have literally taken place with Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, or the killing of George Floyd in Minnesota, or Minneapolis, by the cops, there's been some terrible things that have taken place. So it's been very emotional for a lot of us. It's been very trying for many of us. A lot of us have been impacted by this to some degree or another, literally across our country. And so I want to talk about something that's a little near and dear to my heart, and I'll get to that here in a minute as to why. But I think it impacts all of us. If you're watching today, this impacts all of us. And what I want to do is I want to talk about racism and what our response is to racism. Jesus spoke about this. He talked about how we work or how we treat some of the marginalized people in our societies, whether it was the homeless or the hungry, those in prison. And he spoke about this in words that I think we all need to take to heart. Jesus said this in Matthew 5:25, starting in verse 40, he said this, "I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." When you did something to the least of these, my brothers, you were doing it to me. And so I don't know where you're at today. I don't know what you're doing, but can you just stop for just a second and lean into what I'm about to say? Because in light of that passage of Scripture, in light of what Jesus is saying, this is what I believe. In light of the recent events in our nation, and in light of what Jesus says, you must picture Jesus with his neck under the knee of that police officer. You must picture Jesus as that 17-year-old kid running and getting shot and killed. You must see the face of Jesus in the store owners and watching them as their stores or their shops burn to the ground. You must see the face of Jesus in the people who have been discriminated against time and time again. So here's my main point for the day. God's people, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ, God's people are to treat those who are marginalized in society like they would Jesus. So let me ask you a question. How does that make you feel? When I say something like that, how does that make you feel? Some of you can probably relate to that. Some of you get it. Some of you are mad that I'm even bringing this subject up today. You think you ought to no, we don't want to talk about that. Some of you rationalize your hatred towards others. Some of you may think, wow, you hate cops, Tim, from some of the things you've already said. Some of you are rationalizing acts of violence that are even taking place today through the rioting. Some of you are fired up right now that I'm even bringing up this subject. Some of you may even just be indifferent. The things that I've said right now haven't affected you at all, which really, truly breaks my heart, because I think it breaks the heart of God when we're indifferent. And I think there's probably a group of you right now that may be in tears. And so my question, when you see someone facing injustice, who do you see? Do you see the face of Jesus or not? Now, before we jump in any further, I want to give you some of my background, because this may bring some understanding from where I come from, the position that I come from. Several years ago, I actually worked for a sheriff's department, Warren County Sheriff's Department in Monmouth, Illinois. I worked there for over 7 years. I worked alongside of the sheriff and other deputies and correctional officers. I worked alongside of police officers, state police. I worked alongside of all kinds of cops, okay? And this is what I know. Most of these guys, the vast majority of these men and women, care about their communities deeply. They do an upstanding, phenomenal job. But yes, some of them aren't. And some of them take advantage of their position, and that is true. Some of you may not know this as well, that my wife and I, Mindy and I, we adopted 2 children from Haiti. They're black. And we've even been questioned. Why would you do such a thing? Shouldn't they live with someone of their own kind? And I have to admit, all this subject grates my emotions. I mean, it tears me up on the inside, because I would rather my friends, whether they're black, brown, white, whatever, even some of you pasty white people, all right? I would rather you just be my friends, just my friends. And my kids, just be my kids, because that's what they are, not black, not white, whatever the case may be. And so this is the position I come from today. And what hurts me is to know that this topic, when my kids see me preaching today, because they will see me preaching today, I will have to explain to them, to my kids, why we even need to have a sermon that talks about race and color, ethnicity, and equality. I share all this because I want you to know I love police officers. I love cops because of my experience. I love my family and my friends. And many of them don't share the same skin color as I do. They don't look like me. Some of them are grateful they don't look like me. Let's be honest. Excuse me. And so it's with those thoughts that I say this. With that knowledge, that I tell you that it breaks my heart. It's so heartbreaking for me what is happening in our country right now. And the ways that I see people fighting and speaking over one another, especially on social media, where nobody wins. So I say this up front. Because this is my disclaimer. That we as a church need to clearly condemn the sinful acts of people, the evil behavior of people. There's been things that are taking place in our country, in our society, in our area that are wicked, that are evil, that are terrible things. And I believe without hesitation that it must be forcefully eradicated from our culture, period. And I believe the church must be the driving force behind it. Because I believe, as Christians, that the Bible speaks clearly about this issue of race. So it's with that thought that I come to you today and I say this, that I believe the church is called to be a part of the solution. I believe that as Jesus followers, we need to be leading the way in demonstrating how to love everyone. Actual encounter that Jesus had with a fella, okay? Jesus is speaking with this guy, and he tells him how to love other people. And actually, this story, it deals with racism. It truly does. So I want to look at this. It's found in the Bible. If you have your Bibles, you can turn there in Luke chapter 10. And an interesting encounter that Jesus has with this expert of religious law. Okay, he's a Pharisee. And so this guy comes up to Jesus, and he actually has a really good question. He comes up to Jesus, and he says, Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Now, I think that's a great question. It's an amazing question. And so Jesus, as he often does, doesn't necessarily answer. A lot of times what he would do is he would answer the question with a question, okay? And that's what he does with this guy. He says, well, you're an expert in the law. What's written in the law? And so this guy, this expert, comes back and he says, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus is just like, that's it. That's perfect. Now, go and do that. Now, this guy was sharp, and he was a little disturbed by Jesus' answer, so he's going to come back at Jesus. And this is exactly what he does. He asks a second question, a follow-up question, a very pointed, very specific, very clarifying question, and he asks Jesus this in Luke 10, starting verse 29. He says this. All right? He says, Jesus, so who is my neighbor? I'm supposed to love people and I'm supposed to love my neighbor, but who exactly is that? In other words, what this guy is saying is, there's some people around me that I'm not so sure I want to love. I mean, do I love those people who have, that weird hair, those tattoos, those ear piercings, those body piercings, those booby piercings? Did I just say booby piercings? Can you get by with saying booby piercings in the church? I don't know, but I just did. And I think it's weird. Anyway, it's just my opinion. So do I have to love people like that? I can hear Matt in the sound booth laughing right now. Anyway. All right. So do we have to love people like that? Do I have to love people who hate me? Do I have to love them if they have a different accent than I have, come from a different country, a different language, and we don't even speak the same language? Do I have to love them? Do I have to love people of different race, different ethnicities? How about this, Jesus? Do I have to love people from different religions, different belief systems? What about people of different skin color that live a lot differently than I do? Jesus, I know I'm supposed to love my neighbor, but does that who's on that list? Who's on my neighbor's list? And what's interesting is that Jesus doesn't answer that specific question. I love Jesus, all right? Because it's almost like Jesus takes everything to the next level, and he knows what our hearts are, so he kind of pushes us to really dig deep into our own hearts and our own minds. And so instead of answering that specific question, Jesus shares with this guy a story. It's called a parable, actually, to illustrate how to love our neighbor. Jesus shows us how to love everyone in this story. So he starts talking, and he tells this guy, he says, so there's a guy, he's this Jewish guy, and he's on this dangerous road. It's actually a road that, was known for having robbers and stuff hanging out on. And so he's on this road, and he's heading to Jericho, and all of a sudden a band of bad dudes come up on him. They beat him. I mean, they beat this guy senseless. They beat the daylights out of him, okay? And they leave him bleeding alongside of the road. As a matter of fact, we don't know this, but perhaps this Jewish guy is going to die if he doesn't get some kind of attention quick. And so Jesus says, so here's this guy, this Jewish man laying in the ditch, okay? And he says, a couple guys come by. He says, the first one is another Jewish person, okay? Jew in the ditch, Jewish person walking down, but he takes it to another level. He says, it was a Jewish priest. Yes, he says this Jewish priest comes walking by this guy, and instead of stopping to help him, the Jewish priest goes way out around him and keeps going. Now, we can rationalize that, as many people are rationalizing some of the acts that are going on in our culture, because, hey, this Jewish priest, if he stops and that guy was actually dead, then he's touched something unclean, and so he's ceremonially unclean, and he can't go do his job. So he may not get paid, may not be able to receive the stuff that he's supposed to be receiving on that day, so because he has to stay out of the temple until he's been made clean, right? So it was going to cost him too much to stop and help this person. Then Jesus goes on and he says there was a second guy that came by. He's a Levite. So this Levite, who is another Jewish person in the ditch, Jewish person walking down the road, he comes by and it's like he just pretends that he doesn't even see him, right? He just kind of turns his head and goes around. In other words, kind of like what some people may have done in some of the recent events that maybe you and I have done, where it's just like, dude, that's none of my business. If I just turn a blind eye to it, then I don't have to get involved. I don't have to be there. Then Jesus says 3 words. And these 3 words would have been just jaw-dropping, shocking to his audience. Because he says this. The next 3 words are this. Luke 10:33. But a Samaritan. Okay? Not a Jew, but a Samaritan. And why this was so jaw-dropping to his audience was this. That the Jews, the guy like in the ditch, and the Samaritan who's walking by, who's going to help this Jew, have been in like this fight fest for 700 years. I mean, they hated each other. The Samaritans were hated by the Jewish people so much because they felt like the Samaritans were like half-breeds. So it was a racial issue. It truly was a racial issue. So the Samaritans were hated by the Jewish people, and so the Samaritans just did what comes natural. You know this. It's our natural tendency. If somebody hates on me, then what am I going to do to them? I'm going to hate them back. And so that's what's been happening. 700 years. Racial tension, racial hatred between the Samaritans and the Jewish people. And so Jesus says this, a Samaritan, as he traveled down, came where that man was, where that Jewish man was. And when he saw him, what did he do? He took pity upon him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on him. And then he put him on his donkey, his own donkey, and brought him to an inn and cared for him. This Samaritan guy, okay, who would have been hated by this man in the ditch, they wouldn't have gotten along at all, did one simple act. And what did he do? Instead of walking away, instead of walking around, he crossed the street to where he was, and he helped him. He took pity upon him. He took pity on another human being. And even though he was a different race, even though he was from, just somebody who was in racial tension maybe for years in their own lives, this guy showed love to a man that was in need. Period. Dr. Martin Luther King, he said this about this very passage of Scripture that Jesus is sharing this story. Martin Luther King said this. He said, the first question that the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? However, when the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, He reversed the question and says, if I do not stop, and I do not help this man, what will happen to him? Can I tell you something? This is so much the gospel. This is so much the heart of the gospel. Loving God is all about loving others. Even if we have differences between us, some might even argue, especially if we have differences between us, that is the gospel. Loving others because we love God. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Both of equal, hear me on this, both of equal importance. And I would challenge you to think, you cannot love God if you do not love people. I believe that wholeheartedly. You cannot truly love God if you do not love people. 9 minutes. 9 minutes. I paused for less than 10 seconds right there. 9 minutes. And no one helped George Floyd. There was people all around. No one stopped and said, hey, let him up. No one on the streets that day, not even his fellow officers, said to the one that was holding him down, pin him down, that's enough. Stop. No one had the courage to do the right thing that day and intervene with George Floyd's life, and he died senselessly. Maybe too many people were scared to interfere. Maybe too many people needed to get to work that day because it would have cost them too much to interfere. Maybe too many people were consumed with themselves and they turned a blind eye and didn't want to get involved. Can we call it what it is? Failure to act is failure to love. Failure to act is failure to love. Anytime we fail to act and respond to anyone in need, hear me on this, it's not a skin issue, it's a sin issue. We have to call it what it is. It's not right before God, and it shouldn't be right before us. And that raises a big question. That raises a big question. For those of us in particular, I'm going to talk to the Christians out here. I'm going to talk to Christ followers for a little bit here. Because I believe the church should be leading the way in this. As Christ followers, as Jesus followers, how are we called to love our neighbors? How are you and I called to love our neighbors? How are we called to love the people that may be looking a little bit different than we do? I want to give you two important things today. So many different things that I wanted to talk about, but I narrowed it down to two very important things. And the first one's going to be tough. I'm going to tell you right away, this is going to be tough. It's going to be far more difficult than it sounds, okay? But I guarantee you this first one, we have to get right. We must get right. And I think we can, okay? With God intervening, with God helping us to be honest with ourselves, to be transparent with ourselves, to be sincere with ourselves. Number one, we need to recognize that we all have prejudice to some degree or another. And we need to find out what those are. Number one, we need to recognize our prejudice. This is really difficult. I mean, you stop and think about it. Who wants to admit that I'm prejudiced? Who wants to admit that? Nobody. It's difficult to look at the man in the mirror and say, dude, you're a prejudiced person. Right? I mean, it's just difficult. And I believe here's the reason why. We justify our rationales. We justify our rationales, right? We justify how we feel towards someone. Even if our prejudices or maybe even the fact that your racist attitude isn't intentional, okay? You may not be intentionally being this way. It's still sinful. And I think we all need to ask God to reveal, if that is in us, what is it? What does it look like? So let me start off with what I believe the word prejudice means, okay? Let's look at a definition of prejudice. Prejudice is simply a preconceived option, or opinion, a preconceived opinion that is not based upon reason or actual experiences. I'll bet most of you, and I think back to my own life and some of the prejudices that I've had towards other people, okay? And some of them may not have even been skin color, but other prejudice towards people. And I'm going to guess that all of us, to some degree, have had prejudice towards people, and here's why. Guess what? We're sinful at nature. And so we can so easily fall into this trap. Let me just give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. How many of you look at somebody else who's rich, okay? We look at rich people, and all of a sudden, how many times do we say, rich people, in general, are greedy, right? They're just greedy. Or rich people are this, or rich people are that. Maybe you grew up thinking that heavy people, fat people, are lazy. How many of you have ever said that or thought that? Oh, they're fat, they must just be lazy, right? The younger generation, they don't work. Those guys, man, they simply won't work. How about this? Old people are out of touch. What are they going to teach us? Old people, they're just out of touch with reality. How about this? Pastors are greedy. Oh yeah, they're greedy crooks. You ever heard that one? All pastors are that way, by the way. We are. How about this? White guys. White guys can't jump. I don't know where that came from, but whoever made it up is absolutely right, actually. I don't know. But so, I mean, you fill in the blank. Black people are fill in the blank. Asian people are fill in the blank. Cops are fill in the blank. Those Baptists are fill in the blank. Those Methodists are fill in the blank. Those Christians are fill in the blank. Those church people fill in the blank. Those people who watch NASCAR fill in the blank. Those people with cats fill in the blank. Carol Martin, I know that you're going to write me on that one, aren't you? I get it. All right. I deserve it. All right. But here's the thing. Most of us probably grew up thinking certain things about certain people. We just did. We grew up thinking certain things. And here's what I want you to acknowledge. I need you to acknowledge that you probably have some form of prejudice inside of you. It may not be race. It may not be race. But there's probably some prejudice in you. And you need to dig deep and ask God to reveal that to you. And just say, wow, I may be prejudiced towards somebody. Here's a little test. If you're wondering who that may be, take a list of names, take a list of characteristics of people, and just say something like this. If you've ever said, I'm not racist, but, can I tell you something? There's never ever anything good after that but. I'm not racist, but. No. Can I tell you something? If you ever said, I'm not racist, but, you're racist. Period. Okay? Call it what it is, to some degree or another, at some level or another, and you have to acknowledge it. You have to admit it. So I'll admit one. I'm only going to give you one. I probably have far more than I care to admit, but I hope God reveals them to me. Some of you may remember after 9/11, right? I have to admit, after 9/11, shortly after 9/11, I would get on a plane. And if I saw somebody who I thought was a Muslim, dude, all of a sudden, it was in my gut. And I had to think about those things every day. I would think about, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? Who are those people? You know, and all of a sudden, I'm not racist, but look at those. And I would get nervous, and I would get uncomfortable around. Even feel like, wow, if something would happen to those people, right? If something negative would happen, injustice would happen to those people, well, that's what they deserve. That's what they did to us.
And that, my friend, is sin. And it not only breaks my heart now, but I know that it broke the heart of God. It takes courage. It takes honesty. It takes transparency. It takes integrity to recognize truthfully any prejudice, any racism, and admit it before yourself and admit it before God and repent of that sin. That's huge. Some of you are probably ready to click off, but please don't. Stay with me. Here's the second thing. Number 2. This one may be just as tough. But number 2, we're going to love those that are different from us. We're going to learn to love people who are different from us. Love those who are different. Love them deeply from the heart. Not just say it, but demonstrate it. This is what God has called us to do. To love those who are different from us. Sometimes this looks like the Good Samaritan. Sometimes we have to cross the road. Okay, we have to cross the road to help out. Probably one of the best illustrations of this that I saw, came to mind when I was thinking about this, was a very moving story. I love this story where someone crossed the road to help someone. It actually happened in 1996. The Ku Klux Klan members were having a rally in Michigan. And the police knew that there was probably going to be some tension. They knew actually some protesters were coming in to protest what the Ku Klux Klan was there. And because the Ku Klux Klan was just demonstrating a lot of hate, okay? And so there was this guy who infiltrated, he was a KKK member who infiltrated the protesters. This guy was wearing a Confederate flag T-shirt. I mean, my goodness. He had white supremacy tattoos all over himself. He had a good number of people recognize him as being one of the KKK members, and someone just pointed him out and started screaming, "Kill the Nazi, kill the Nazi, kill the Nazi." And suddenly, everybody starts running, and they tackle this guy, and they start beating him senseless, literally senseless. He's on the ground getting beat and kicked and prodded with sticks, and they're just wailing on this dude. Well, there was an 18-year-old girl. Her name was Keisha Thomas, African-American girl, who runs over. She was across the street. She sees this take place. She runs across the street, and she throws her body over this man, protecting him from the blows of the protesters who are protesting in favor of her. What in the world would cause somebody to do that? What on earth would cause a young woman, 18 years old, to put herself at a physical risk to protect a man that most likely would want to harm her if he had the opportunity to do so? I mean, who does that? Who does that? Let me tell you who does that. A committed follower of Jesus Christ who's demonstrating that she loves God, she loves people. Interviews later with Keisha, she said this. She says, "I'll tell you why I was able to do this." She said, "It was because of my faith. It was because of my faith." After the incident, she says, I'm a committed Catholic Christian. And she said this, and I quote, she said, "I knew what it was to be hurt like this. The many times that it's happened, and I wish someone would have stood up for me." What she did was this brave young woman, what she did is what you and I need to do. You know what she did? What she did was she walked across the street to protect a human being. That's all. What she did was she walked across the street to protect a human being who very likely would have wished her harm. Can I tell you something? That's how you love your neighbor. That's how you show the love of Jesus. In fact, she's gone on, she's got quite the platform today even, where she's able to speak to hundreds, if not thousands, maybe millions of people. And she deserves it. And she speaks out on racial reconciliation all the time. So I was very interested in what she had to say recently. And so I found some articles. And I love this point. Keisha says she was talking and someone didn't ask her, so what can we do? What can we do? And Keisha simply said this: it doesn't always have to be the big things. Oh, it can be. But see, she says, to show love, to bridge this racial division that is going on, I'll quote Keisha again. She said this: the biggest thing you can do is just be kind to another human being. It can come down to simple eye contact, a smile. It doesn't have to be a monumental act. What is it? It's just showing love. It's showing decency. It's showing honor and respect and consideration. It's treating another human being like another human being. It's showing the love of Jesus. In fact, please write this down. If you haven't written anything else down today, this is so important. What is racism? Racism isn't just the presence of hatred, okay? It's not just that. Racism isn't just hatred. It's also the absence of love. This is big. Because some of you would say, well, I don't hate that person. I don't hate that person, so I can't be prejudiced. The deeper question is, are you demonstrating love? It's not just the presence of hatred. I hate you, right? It's also the absence of showing love, that I accept you, I embrace you. You're my brother, you're my sister, and I love you. It's not just the presence of hatred. It's the absence of love. It's the absence of touch. It's the absence of embracing each other. It's the absence of saying, you are welcome at my table. We are one together, and it's showing love. You know, Jesus said, to those of us who are Christ followers, he says something to us. He says, you realize how the world will know. You realize that the world will know that you're my followers. And I want you to hear me on this. He didn't say the world will know that you are my followers, you're my believers with your perfect theology. He didn't say that they will know you're my followers by your church attendance. He didn't say that they will know that you're my followers if you get baptized, which is very important. Some of you need to do that. He didn't say how much money you give to charitable organizations, including the church, which is very important, and some of you need to do that. He didn't say those things, okay? This is what he said. The world will know that you're my followers, you're my disciples, that you love me. He says, the world will know if you love one another. Not just loving from a distance, not just saying that I love you, not just saying I love other people, not just saying that you love the people that you grew up with the same color and the same belief systems and all those things. No, if we love everyone, particularly the people that may be marginalized, particularly the people that may look different than you and I. So who is our neighbor? Who is our neighbor? According to Jesus, your neighbor is the next person you come in contact with. Well, how do I love them, Tim? I mean, so put some tangible stuff on my plate. Let's talk about that. How do you love people? You love your neighbor as you've been loved by Jesus Christ. And this is big. This is huge, because how did Jesus Christ love me? Let me tell you how much Jesus Christ loved me. That while I was a long ways away from him, while I was sinning against him, while I was hating on him, Jesus Christ died for me on the cross. Scripture tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for me. He didn't die for us because we're good people. He died for us because God is already good. He loved me when I didn't deserve to be loved. I've been freely loved upon in a way that I couldn't love myself even. And so, as Christians who've received that love from Jesus Christ, we reflect his love to others. That's it. If you love Jesus Christ, you know what he did for you. If you understand your sin and your brokenness, and Jesus Christ went to the cross for you to demonstrate his unconditional love for you, then we become a reflection of that love to others. We become a mirror of Jesus Christ to others through our lives. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, where you are from, what your background is. Let me tell you something. You are welcomed in the family of God. It doesn't matter. We're not one, we're not a bunch of different, we're one race in the eyes of God. We're the human race. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter your color of your skin. It doesn't matter the language you speak. We are one race, the human race, in the eyes of God. I love how Paul puts this in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. He says there's neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, neither male nor female. You are all one in Jesus Christ. We're one in Jesus Christ. You and I are one in Jesus Christ. And I pray you feel not only my heart and my passion for that, but I pray that you feel God's passion for that. You are welcomed. You are welcomed in the family of God. You are loved. So what do? We do like what Keisha did. We cross the road. We cross the street. And we meet people where they're at. Jesus Christ did the same thing. However far away we had gotten from God, however far away we had gotten from Jesus Christ, Jesus always meets us where we're at and takes us where we need to be. We do the same thing as the Samaritan man who saw the Jewish man bleeding to death in the ditch. We cross the road and we're kind and we're generous and we extend love. Can I tell you something? That's how this gridlock of hate stops. By showing love. By crossing the street and showing love. So John was on the island of Patmos and he got a vision from God of what heaven's going to look like and some things that were going on in his culture that he needed to share with the people. And he got a glimpse of heaven. And this is powerful. I'm going to close with this, okay? This is powerful stuff. John writes as he gets a glimpse of heaven in Revelation chapter 7, starting in verse 9. He says this, "And I saw a vast crowd from every nation and every tribe and every people and every language standing in front of the throne and before the Lamb, before Jesus. And they were clothed in white and they held palm branches in their hands," those palm branches, representing the peace, representing the power of God. And I love this. "And they were shouting with a loud roar." I love that. I love that imagery. It's just a roar. And they were shouting this: "Salvation comes from our God who sits on the throne and from the Lamb." In unison, unified, under the Lamb of Christ, under the love of Jesus Christ. They were holding hands together. People from every nation, every tribe, every language around the world, together, indifferent with each other, unified together, because they were going to spend eternity in heaven together. And can I tell you something? If we're going to spend eternity in heaven together, because we're all going to be there, we can at least share a meal together, can't we? We can cross the road and share a meal. That's how we love one another. Heaven's going to be full. We might as well start showing that love of God to each other here on earth now. So, I'm done. Racism is not a skin issue. It's a sin issue. It's unacceptable to God. It's unacceptable to us. It won't be tolerated in the church. The only thing we can do, the only debt we have, is the debt of love. It's a debt of love that God has demonstrated to us. And therefore, let us love one another. So, church, let's cross the street.
Hallelujah, holy, holy, God Almighty, great I am, who is worthy, none besides thee, God Almighty, great I am, great I am. He's a great I am. Over all. The mountains shake before you, the demons run and flee. At the mention of your name, King of Majesty, there is no power in hell or any who can stand before the power and the presence of great I am, 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 great I am. Make us one, God, make us one. Let your kingdom come. God, make us one. We confess all our offenses. We confess we've been afraid. We repent all the pride, let all the hurt be washed away. For all the wars and violence against our enemies, come heal our land with your great river. Restore the family and make us one. God, make us one. Let your kingdom come and make us one. Outro.
Sorry about that, I caught Aaron off guard. But y'all have a great day. I hope you guys have enjoyed something, learned a little bit about equality, a little bit about walking across the street. So I ask that all of you walk across the street today, wherever you're at. Anytime you see trouble, you guys have a blessed day. See, that was the thing that we were gonna do, and then I changed it up on him. Have a good day.
Man, that was not great.